Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Two World Podcast. I'm one of your co hosts, Jacob, and I have with me today my other co host, who is.
I am Barney.
And Barney and I really enjoyed the Mario movie that came out earlier this year, and we wanted to dedicate an episode to talking about Mario on screen. So, both the most recent film, the film that came out in the 90s, and even some of those unique cartoons that came out in the late 80s and early 90s connected with Mario Brothers. So, to get us started, I just like to ask Barney, when you think of this topic, the most recent Mario movie, do you have a distinct memory of when you first heard about it or when you first saw it? Is there anything that jumps out that really makes this also kind of a little bit of a personal story?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. I had been excited about the idea of a Mario movie being made kind of in the animated or computer graphic style. Um and then I it, as always is the case with me with movies that I want to see, I try to avoid reading much about it or knowing much about it beforehand. But I had seen who would do some of the voices, and I thought, oh, those sound like they'll be pretty good picks. But I tried to stay away from like anyone kind of like giving their critique of this choice or that choice or the movie or whatnot. And then I didn't surprisingly, even though here in Japan there were no trailers on TV or anything like that. Yeah, that I saw. So I was really in the dark, I guess kind of in a good way, nothing getting spoiled of what might happen. But in the other hand, it was kind of not knowing when is the movie actually coming out. Um, and then I didn't see it until finally I visited America, and you lent us the copy of it, and I was there with my kids, and we watched it that same day, and it has such a nice. I remember thinking it has such a nice pace to it. Wow, it really just kind of flew by, but it was a lot of fun. But leading up to it, whatnot, it was hard to it was always like in the back of my mind, but it wasn't something that I was consciously excited for, like as maybe I had been when some of the last Star Wars movies were released, or the most recent James Bond movie finally was released. I was really, really anticipating those, but this one, I guess, just it was off of my radar enough that I didn't quite wasn't excited for it, but I knew that I wanted to see
Oh, that makes sense. It's fascinating to me that there wasn't really much of an advertising campaign in Japan because maybe they figured that they didn't need to do that to add to the hype or interest that would be for that film because it's already such a known franchise there. But I don't know because I feel like here, right and left on shows and YouTube clips, and even in print publications and here and there, the Mario movie was really well advertised.
it.
And so I don't know if that's because Illumination Studios has released so many films here in North America that like having connections in North America, if that affects how they advertise. But yeah, I was definitely excited about it. And then being a fan of Mario and video games, I had played a number of video games with Micah and Aubrey and Hannah. And Hannah was just the right age, especially to get excited about this movie
Mhm.
because I said, "Oh, look,
Mhm.
it's the art style looks similar to games that we played, and won't that be fun to go see?" And we actually did go as a family to see it, and it was a
Oh,
real
nice.
treat to catch it in the theater. I don't know if we saw it the opening day or the day after, but it was really close to the beginning. But like you said, when I heard who the voice actors would be, I thought, oh, this is interesting. Jack Black as Bowser, what a great casting
Yeah.
choice. Chris Pratt as Mario, Anna Taylor Joy, I think that's how you
Yeah.
pronounce her, as Princess Peach. Michael Keegan, is that right for Toad?
Mhm. Mhm.
Charlie, I'm forgetting his last name for who did Luigi. Charlie, is it Day Lewis or something? I'm trying to think.
Right.
Charlie Day. I'm trying to think. Anyway, Seth Rogen as Donkey
Yeah,
Kong,
right. Yeah.
Fred Aniston as Cranky Kong.
Hmm.
Just it could go on and on. Like what a wonderful cast.
Oh
And
yeah.
I want to just hold up real quickly the Blu-ray cover here, and it's just incredible, like how well they transferred the art style into
Hmm.
animation, and I think that Illumination Studios really was a good partner for Nintendo for this one. And so I guess maybe one of my first questions for you is when you saw it, did you think that they had a good balance between doing fan service to those of us who grow up with Mario Brothers games and cartoons and other things, and balancing that with potential new fans and the younger generation and drawing those in who have never really heard much about Mario?
Yeah, I wondered as I was watching the movie. Let's see, I wondered, um, like, are they? I kept noticing things in the background. I thought, Is this an Easter egg? Should I know what this is?" Um, and then, but then on the other hand, I saw lots of things that I did recognize. And then so I thought, am I getting everything, or are there some things that like I'm not aware of? Like soon after they arrive in the Mushroom Kingdom, and there's like that antique shop, and all of the toads are buying different things. And I thought, I don't get that, but it must be a reference to something. But then on the other hand, like when they're traveling through different worlds on their way um to talk with the Kongs, like, and the different worlds that you see, I thought, oh, I remember those from that game or that game or that game. Or, oh, it's neat the way that they could get the Yoshis worked in there. um so I thought it was very nice how they kind of took a lot of different elements from a lot of the different um um games that the games within series that they've had, and slip them in there, some obvious and some more subtle. And then I thought that in general it was so well done, and the the plot was nice, and it was very accessible for so many people, that I think that for sure, like anyone who hadn't played the games very much, or wasn't so sure about the characters, probably could really connect with it. I thought, I know that my kids, they both really liked it. I don't they haven't they have seen YouTubers play Mario or Mario Party games and whatnot, but they've never really played them so much, because they're still a little bit, I think the level's a little bit tricky for them, maybe. Um, but yeah, they'll enjoy watching it, and we've watched it now that it's on streaming. We've watched it quite a few times that I can think of. Maybe even just 2 weeks ago, we watched it again. It's one of those that's fun to watch and rewatch, I think. And then I realized it's just about less than 100 minutes, so um, it's not so super long, and you can get watch through it and enjoy it over and over. I think.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. One of the first thoughts I had when leaving the theaters, oh, I want to see that movie again. And I definitely, in talking with Hannah, especially, we're like, oh, as soon as it comes out on home release, we want to see it. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually pre-ordered the Blu-ray, and when it came right away, we sat down and watched it. But now that it is on streaming, I agree, it's just there and available for a lot of people, and it's fun to rewatch it. And it was accessible. I felt like every family member liked it. One criticism I heard, I listened to a podcast about Nintendo games and properties and things called Nintendo Voice Chat. And the one criticism that I heard was for diehard fans, they wanted a little bit more robust of a plot. But if you think about it, if you're introducing
Mm-hmm.
Mario and that whole world to a whole new generation of fans, you can't get too complicated and
Mm-hmm.
overburdened with the backstory and explaining things. So I felt like they tried to thread that needle carefully, or made a very tricky, difficult balance achievable there with what they did. And I think there was quite a bit also of fan service in terms of Easter eggs, like you mentioned, when they first arrive in the Mushroom Kingdom. Mario walks by that antique store, and there's somebody looking at what appears to be a game cartridge, and the person said, "Oh, you need to blow in that to get it to work." And then back in New York City, I think it was New York, wasn't it? Where
Yeah.
Mario and Luigi are from, before they enter the Mushroom Kingdom, in Mario's room, there are all these posters to classic Nintendo
Uh-huh.
franchises
Mm-hmm.
in the video game realm,
Mm-hmm.
and at one point they're in this one restaurant, and there's a Donkey Kong machine, and
Uh-huh.
there is an older person playing Donkey Kong, and that person is actually an old art style of Mario. And
Right.
the person who voices that character in that scene is Charles Martinet, who actually voices his character in the real games up until just recently. So
Oh.
there's all these little nods. In one scene, I don't know if you remember this from the film. Mario's kind of running through the city, and he goes through a construction site, and he's jumping and doing all of
Uh-huh.
these
Mm-hmm.
maneuvers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you watch that and then you go back and you look at World 1 from the original Super
Mm-hmm.
Mario Brothers, at just the moments that he's jumping and ducking, and it matches the overlay of that board. And at
Mm-hmm.
the end, when reaches the end, it matches up with him getting to the flagpole in the video game. So it's another nice nod. So there were lots of um, examples of that. And it didn't just stop with the earliest Mario games. There were nods all throughout the different iterations,
Mm-hmm.
different characters, and even bringing in the Mario Kart franchise, which was a really
Yeah.
fun part of the movie. So, yeah, so I felt like that was a nice way to include an older generation of fans, but open it up to a younger generation. And
Yeah.
this,
And
oh, please go ahead.
oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to kind of make a comment about the idea of plot and whatnot. When I haven't read much about the games aside from I haven't had much exposure to the games aside from playing them. So when I thought about the movie to myself, I thought there's a lot that's unexplained about the games already. Like it just starts, Mario's already in the Mushroom Kingdom. So I thought to myself, this is kind of the it what they came up with, how they got the movie going. I thought it makes sense. It's not like there is something that they could have done really differently. I mean, there in somehow or another there has to be a pipe involved.
Right, right.
Right. And I thought, especially with the most recent Mario game, Mario Odyssey, that one is about Bowser wants to marry Princess Peach.
Yes,
So in
yes,
that way, it did it wasn't like they're pulling it out of nowhere, the idea that
for
Bowser
sure.
is really in love with Princess Peach. And that
Yes,
kind of makes sense because where does it start? How does why would Bowser really want Princess Peach in the first place? And hiding her away in this castle, if what is the motivation? So I felt like they really kind of did it justice to bring all those things together in that is with the vehicle of the wedding,
oh
driving
yes.
driving it through. So that for me that really made sense. I could understand why that was, and I couldn't think of really anything else that they could have or should have done differently um regarding that. But yeah, I'll have to check and see what other people thought, or what other people maybe imagined that they hoped the direction it could have gone instead.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned Bowser wanting to marry Peach, I just have to ask you what you thought of the Peaches song by Jack Black. To me, that was the highlight of the entire
Mm,
movie.
hmm.
We would never expect to see Bowser at like a grand piano singing a love song to Peach in that way. And the way that Jack Black hams it up, peaches, 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 peaches,
Yeah.
peaches, 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 peaches. I love you. It's just, and
Oh
then,
yeah,
yeah.
that's one that we love it here too. Oh, it was so nice. And yeah, it's interesting to see this side of Bowser because as the villain, but as like basically he's just in the first video game, he's just at the very end of the game. We don't really know much about who he is, and then they gave him such personality, and then they used Jack Black to help deliver that personality. And I just love so much where after they get the superstar and he's got all his troops there, and they're having this big party and to celebrate their success, their victory, and then he's like, and we're gonna have, and I'm gonna ask Princess Peach to marry me, and and everyone's a little bit stunned and like because they're so used to doing these bad things, and then here's this, why we're having a wedding, and then like the one person who disagrees or whatnot, or has a question, like gets fried. Oh, what if she says no, and then he toasts him and turns him into dry bones, and then he says, then we'll burn down the Mushroom Kingdom or not, and then that gets everyone excited, for the mayhem and chaos again. But it was so, I really appreciated that. Using the piano, using music as much as they did in a few different scenes with the Peaches song, how he's just so and he's honestly in love with her, um, and then when he's just noodling at the piano and he asks Kamek, he asks the Magic Koopa to jam with him for a while, and then at the very end of the movie, it was nice that they let him keep a piano, and then he was still singing another verse that he came up with to his song. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Did you happen to see the music video that was released on YouTube, where Jack Black's wearing just like a green suit and like a Bowser head covering thing, and he,
Yep.
oh man, that was so good
Yeah, I
too.
know. That was very, very fun.
Um, yeah, it
Uh,
just shows how with the animation, it was amazing, and it's also just with Jack Black's kind of over the top moves and
mhm.
way of acting as he sings, it holds up too. So yeah, he was fantastic. Um, were you surprised by any of the voices or the ways that the characters were portrayed?
Yeah, I don't know about surprise, but I don't know Anna Taylor-Joy, I guess.
Mm.
I don't watch a whole lot of movies, so unfortunately, but I don't think I've ever seen her in anything. So, and I never looked up her picture, so I always just imagined that whoever this is must look like Peach. You know, for some
Mm.
reason it just fits so well. Um, that the voice, and then with Peach and then her personality, it kind of just made the right resonance to the voice. It just
Mm.
matched perfectly with like how she's strong and how she's capable. I thought that was just so nice. What a great combination. And um yeah, I remembered seeing um that Seth Rogen was one of the choices. Is that right? And for
Yes.
Donkey Kong? Yeah. And
Yes.
then some people were saying that they were disappointed because he said, I'm not going to change my voice for it. He said, this the way I talk is the way Donkey Kong's going to sound. But it worked so well. I thought that I couldn't think that you would want him to sound, you know, like an ape or anything.
Yes.
I like that they gave him just a normal talking
Yes.
as a normal person would, to kind of give us the impression that there are different races or species living together, but they're all equally capable, and they all communicate well. It's not like he's trying to learn a common language or anything like that, um, but he's very able to communicate very well. And I liked how they they kept kind of the ongoing angst between Mario and Donkey Kong. Even though they were on the same team, they still really didn't. There were times where they respected each other, but there were times where they really still kind of had that tension between one another.
That's
Um,
really an interesting point because
mhm,
Donkey Kong historically as a character was first a villain, and the first appearance of Mario was in that Donkey Kong game,
mhm,
original arcade game, which I know you already know this, Barney, but it's just fascinating to me. Maybe our audience hasn't heard this before, but so when Mario first appeared in that game, he was referred to as Jump Man, and it was only later that he received the name Mario. But throughout the years, Nintendo has chosen to bring Donkey Kong into the role of a protagonist, with many different platforming games for him, like the Donkey Kong Country games, and more recently, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is a really fun Donkey Kong game on Switch. So, but yet there's this history of Donkey Kong being Mario's initial original nemesis. So it was kind of fun to have a little bit of riffing on that in this.
mm,
And you had mentioned the Super Mario Odyssey game that is one of the newer ones on Switch. And it's funny because in that game, one of the places you go is a city. New Donk City, and the mayor of that city is Pauline, and she was
Hmm.
the original female that you were rescuing in the Donkey Kong game. And then she's moved on to other things, and it's just kind of fun how Nintendo plays with that history. And in one of the most interesting boards that is kind of a bonus at the end of New Donk City, if you beat it, if you know where to go in a certain room in this building where people are having a dance party and you go in the pipe, it takes you to this rooftop, and then you go through an old Donkey Kong board with modern graphics, and everybody's cheering for you from the sides, and it has 3D elements and all these special things. And at the very end, you punch below Donkey Kong just like you did in the original game, and he falls off. And it was just a wonderful way to celebrate the old and the original vision, but then modernize it. And they did that really well with, like you said, the tension between the characters in the movie. That was good, and they left it in a way that Donkey Kong can be a protagonist and have his own adventures. I think, even without Mario. So, what did you think of the other supporting characters like Toad and Luigi?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. I I appreciated. I wonder how they came up with the idea that the toads within the Mushroom Kingdom are generally timid or easily scared. I'm not sure where that came from, and so it was. But it was fun to see um, that Toad, in who eventually adventures with them, was so outgoing and creative and clever and adventurous. I thought when before the I saw the movie, I think my image was probably more like Toad from like Mario Party games, where he's kind of like the referee or the host. And so I
Okay,
thought I did think he would be pretty knowledgeable, but then I didn't think he would necessarily be so adventurous.
I see.
Um, yeah. And then Luigi, I'm very curious to hear how you felt. I know that the Luigi Mansion games that he easily gets scared,
Yes,
but yeah, but I wondered if maybe he was could have I don't know if that Luigi, how they portrayed him is kind of how other people see him, but I always thought that he was more along the lines of an equal with Mario and equally brave, I felt, or capable. But throughout the movie, there's a lot of things that he isn't able to do, and I thought that I hoped that they had would have portrayed him as a little bit stronger than what they did. But a lot of
interesting.
the movie, he's scared,
Yes.
right, or hesitant, or indecisive, or even when they're on their way to their plumbing appointment, their first job, Mario has to kind of help him along, through the way, and he's kind of blundering along the way, getting stuck in the cement and whatnot, and I thought that was, it was nice in a way, but I thought, well, when you're doing a two-player game, if Mario dies, then Luigi's turn is next, and he's just as able to clear the boards as Mario is. So I wasn't sure why they decided to go that way with Luigi, other than maybe, hearkening to Luigi's Mansion, but I wasn't sure what else. But do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like your instincts are right that they were really leaning into the Luigi's Mansion games because they do portray him as that timid, scared individual going through the haunted house and trying to find his way out. And there are all these things that scare him and cause him to jump. So they're kind of leaning into that part of the development of his character from those games. But yeah, there are certainly moments in other games and in the past where, yeah, Luigi was portrayed more on par with Mario or close to it for sure. Like the original Mario Brothers game, they were essentially identical sprites, just colored differently. So
Yeah.
one of them had red or let's see, red and brown, and the other
Uh-huh.
was white and green, I think,
Right.
with their
Hmm.
sprites. Um, so they're literally identical almost, other than the coloring. But then over time, I remember when Mario 2 came out, which was
Hmm.
an adaptation of another game. It was originally published as Doki Doki Panic, I believe, and then um, it was kind of redesigned. The character sprites were redesigned to be the four main characters from the Mario universe of Mario, Luigi, Toad, and the Princess. But anyway, that was a chance where they showed how Mario and Luigi were different.
Right.
Luigi had a real long jump and Mario was shorter and stronger. And so it's kind of fun to see them start even that early teasing out the differences.
Mm.
But no, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I think that I'm hoping over time that there'll be character arcs for the different individuals and from the movie that hopefully we'll see more of Luigi and more of Toad and the princess and Donkey Kong and Mario. Like as we go forward, that it will just kind of build that because I know that they have plans in motion already for another one.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, so that's
Hmm.
exciting. And um, yeah, I just really appreciated that they took their time too. It felt like they didn't rush
Yeah.
it. They wanted to make sure that it really represented both the artistic vision of Illumination, but also that of Nintendo. And having Shigeru Miyamoto working as the main consultant on the project was a great decision because he really knows the character, having been the one who
Yeah.
really, in essence, created Mario. So he's seen all these iterations over the years, so he knew how to guide them along the way, which is a quite different story than another Mario movie
Yes.
from an earlier time. Is it okay to transition to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have my DVD copy here of the
Mm.
Mario Brothers movie that came out in the
Mm.
90s. And here's the front. And I'm going to read from the back. It says, and eye popping special effects. And then I'm going to turn it around here. You can see a little bit off the back. It's a blast. This ain't no game. It's a live action thrill ride. The title says, and
Hmm.
you can see right away it's live action.
Yeah.
And you could probably also tell. Let's see. As I mentioned, the cast: Bob Hoskins,
Hmm.
John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper. Um, but you could also tell right away from the cover that their outfits look nothing like the video game outfits, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like
Mm.
the second clue. The first one is this live action. So you're already taken out of
Yeah.
the realm of the video
Right.
game world. Second, their outfits look nothing like their outfits in the video game. And it just goes from there.
Hmm.
The world, the scenery, everything about it could almost have been an independent sci-fi film that is you've just slapped Mario Brothers onto the title,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
you've put a few things here or there that are thematically related to the game. But I remember going with my parents to see this and being so surprised and coming out of the theater and talking with them about this movie and being like, it just didn't feel like it was really that much about Super Mario Brothers as I knew it from the game.
Hmm.
And they were really surprised too, because it just it's just so interesting the decisions that they made. Like I heard this project was plagued with all manner of challenge, from writers leaving and directors switching and production dragging on and all types of unforeseen things that kind of made the final product a little bit more eclectic than it would have been if it had been a real well-oiled machine like we saw with the new Super Mario Brothers movie.
Hmm.
And the other thing
Hmm.
too is that Nintendo wasn't offering any creative guidance.
Yeah.
This property was licensed, and I think this was a big regret of theirs, and they've learned a lesson from it. It's very hard to see this movie if you buy a physical copy. If you can find one, you can see it, but otherwise, it's not on any streaming services. Nintendo doesn't really want it, I don't think, circulated that widely out there because it was an embarrassment. But it's so funny. And I'll stop talking about this soon and give you a chance to respond. But it's just so funny. This many years later, I've watched it a few times, and it's one of those movies that, in a way, it's so bad it's good. It's like entertaining to see, like the decisions that were so quirky then in the '90s. Now somehow, in a strange way, hold up and they're interesting, even
Mm.
though at the time it was so foreign to the characters and the world. Now watching it, it's like knowing that it's an artifact from that time. It's almost fascinating and almost has, I think, almost a cult following now. There's a
Hmm.
subset of people that really enjoy this one. So anyway, do you have any memory of this even being around? Ever seeing any advertisements for it or knowing that it existed? Did you see it at some point?
Yeah, when I saw the cover, then I thought, oh, maybe I had seen that movie poster around, but I think I would have been 14 or so, and I was really into video games then. So I'm surprised that I wasn't more excited about it. But now when I've I haven't seen the movie yet, but when I read about it, or when I watched trailers about it, or other things about it, I kept wondering, who was this supposed to be for?
Yes.
Because, right, isn't it kids who like video
Yes.
games? Right? And then we see the new one, it has the right colors, it has a softness to it, and it has a lot of sunshine
Right.
to it, right? And things look like the video game. But then when you see that, and it's very, very, very dark.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, I don't know thematically, I'm not sure, but just there's just a lot of lack of lighting in the movie. And Bowser is a guy, just a person,
Right.
and or kind of, and then the Goombas are like these shrunken headed things, and then
Yes.
there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of mushrooms. It's like the main tie-in with the movie. And it was just confusing. And I can understand that you, having seen it, been excited for it, and then saw it, and you still remember how it impacted you back then. It must have really thrown a lot of people for a loop after they came out of
Yeah.
watching it.
I think so. Yes. And I think you're right that they hadn't really zeroed in on like a target audience. It's so eclectic. Like there are elements of it that would be delightful to children. Like at one point, these Goomba characters, um, Mario and Luigi, get them swaying back and forth and they're dancing and it looks real funny. And then in another scene, they're in a police station in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, and like the police
Right.
officer who's taking them in, he's asking them questions, like, and then they're sitting beside him is this woman in inappropriate clothing, and it's like, and my parents are like, I could tell they were really uncomfortable or disappointed that that was in the movie, because it was more of a PG-13 type thing for that era instead of um, a PG movie. But
Right.
anyway, there were elements like that all throughout the film, where some things that were childish that would maybe turn off adult viewers, maybe, or they wouldn't find interesting, and then some things that were too mature that would have been uncomfortable for children, or they wouldn't have understood it. So, but then it wasn't only that. I mean, there were some interesting creative decisions that they made. One thing that they had that was unusual in the movie, they had these jump boots, and jumping is a big part of the video game. Mario's always
Yeah,
jumping and
yeah.
hitting
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
the blocks to get coins. But in this world, they're like, well, how can we make jumping a big deal? And so if you put on a pair of boots, they kind of have a spring mechanism, and
Uh-huh.
it propels you upward. And then I don't know if there's also a hover mechanism that's part of it too once you get up there, but that
Mhm.
enables you to travel. And I remember as a kid thinking, even though that wasn't the games, thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, look at those jump boots, uh, but you know, and Yoshi is in it, but it's kind of like a small velociraptor looking
Mm.
creature instead of the cutesy puffy
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
character that he is in the video game. But like I said, despite all of these quirks, at the
Mhm.
time I would definitely say it missed the mark for sure. But now it is interesting to go back and watch it,
Yeah.
because yeah, you're right. The drab colors, this kind of post-apocalyptic world, but yet with
Mhm.
these elements of the video game. Yeah, Bowser looks like a human, but in this scenario, a certain members of the population have evolved from dinosaurs into humanoids, and others have evolved from what just or like Homo sapien type
Yep.
predecessor. So that's why supposedly he looks the same, but he has this dinosaur DNA, and it just like some strange, really strange decisions.
Mm.
Like, um, but anyway, it certainly is an interesting
Mhm.
um, uh, topic to put next to the new one, and to say, boy, what they sure did learn from the first one. And and then when the second one came, they were like, we're
Yeah.
taking our time.
Yeah.
Nintendo's like, we're going to have creative influence and
Mhm.
consult with the studio. It's going to be animated. It's going to be consistent with, like you said, the color palette and the art style.
Mhm.
And even the music style of the video games.
Mm.
A lot of the tunes and the score for the
Mm,
movie
mhm,
were adaptations of
mhm,
some of the
mhm.
greats from the
That's
video
right.
games. And
Yeah.
so I think, yeah, they learned, and it was a much better experience to watch the new one. But the old one is still just a fun curiosity. Um,
I
and
am looking forward to the chance to see it.
oh,
Yeah.
good.
Just that. Mhm.
Well, if you have time, if you end up being able to
Oh
visit this
yeah.
summer, maybe
Mhm.
that could be
Mhm.
something that's on our,
Let's
if
do
we are
it.
able to get together on our bucket list. The other thing I want to show is I have two sets of DVDs
Mhm.
for the cartoon that came out.
Oh yeah.
Here's a couple from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show,
Yeah. Oh.
and these were really interesting because in addition to cartoon segments with stories and adventures, there was also a live action
Mhm.
element with a
Mhm.
Mario and Luigi character that would do a rap, Mario rap, and they would dance. And then, they would, it was kind of like a humorous thing. They would talk about things that they needed to do. And they were oftentimes in their apartment and things would break
Mhm.
and go wrong, or,
Mhm.
and there'd be funny characters that would visit. But it was kind of an interesting mix of animated and live action. I didn't really like the live action as much as the animated parts
Right.
when I was younger,
Right.
but,
Mhm.
it was kind of a, something creative they were trying to do to work at that. But did you have any
Mhm.
experience with that one, the Super Mario
Oh
Brothers Super?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched that one a lot, and yeah, I also probably felt the same. I felt the same where I thought, okay, these actors are fun, but let's get on to the cartoon already. And then I remembered that there was kind of another iteration of the
Yes,
cartoon
I've
after
got a
that.
set of those
Oh
too.
yeah.
Um, this is the Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3. I don't know
Ah, that's
if
what it
this
was.
looks
Mm-hmm.
familiar. And
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
and this one, it was interesting because I felt like, yeah, it was only animation by this
Right.
point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the
Mm-hmm.
art style was a little bit improved,
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
it was a little bit maybe more closely tied to the plot of
Mm-hmm.
some of the games. It had the
Mm-hmm.
Cooperlings in it, and
Uh-huh.
yeah. Did you like watch that one some?
I did. I really, really liked that one too. Yeah, I watched that one quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I know probably Nintendo was licensing out their properties. They were really focused on video games, but they were open to other efforts to get their proper intellectual property out there. And so, yeah, that was fascinating that these studios here in the US were running those, and they weren't really tightly managed by Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo didn't really, I don't think, consult all that much on those, if at all. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, there were departures from some of the things that you would have seen in the games, but it still was building that awareness of Mario and of the brand or the franchise here. And I know that they branched out so much so that when their Mario 3 game came out, there was a movie that showcased it called The Wizard, which was about a big video game contest. And there's this child who's very talented, and he's the wizard character from the game. And at the very end of the movie, after he wins, or as he's about to the place of winning, I guess, they unveil this new Mario game, and it's Mario 3. And at that time, it was such a big deal because that was your first glimpse of that game, was in that movie. And it hadn't been released yet, so you could go and see the movie and be like, oh, this is coming. And then McDonald's at the time was running a series of toys in the Happy Meals, and I remember I still have some of those. I
Oh,
had one that was
nice.
a Mario that you push him down, he was on a spring, and
Uh-huh.
he was the
Oh,
Takuni Mario. And then
yeah.
after a while, the spring would release and he would pop up. And
Mm-hmm.
there was yeah, a turtle, one of the Cooperlings, or no, I'm trying to remember a Cooper Troopa turtle that you push a little inflatable bulb, and it would make his legs move. And it was just like fun things that Nintendo was really trying to get, you know, out there in the popular culture
Mm-hmm.
beyond just the video game realm, into
Mm-hmm.
other merchandise. And so, anyway, those cartoons were part of that. Did you remember seeing anything like that at McDonald's when you were growing up?
Yeah, when you mentioned that Mario one, I think probably I had that one too.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I think that I remember that. And yeah, it was interesting when you point that out. Then I never realized that they weren't Nintendo from the beginning wasn't kind of cashing in on this popularity of this character in the forms of like toys and other things like that. And there, how it was all just really limited to um, just the video games and and then their official magazine. But to find things that related to the games beyond that, you didn't really see it. And it it just I always kind of felt like they were always like kind of there together. But that's a great observation that you made in how Nintendo then eventually started to try to find ways to bring this to bigger audiences, especially younger kids who maybe weren't really able to or didn't have video games, weren't able to really play them, but didn't have them, but to get them interested in the character and using their imagination around with, what this character is, what it's capable of doing, and kind of playing with it in that way. Um, it is, yeah, it's interesting how um, that was something that didn't come along until a few games later, or until the maybe even until around the Super and the next um, video game system came around. And I would like to know. I'd be curious to show these cartoons or movies to audiences here in Japan and kind of get some people's reactions if the cartoons and whatnot are just very Americanized, or if they would feel like there's people here in Japan would feel like there's something that they can connect with as well through them, or if they would, or just what their reaction would be. I would be really curious to
Oh,
hear
that would
that
be
story.
fascinating. I
Hmm.
agree. Yeah. Wow. I love that idea. Yeah, just pulling a random audience, getting them to
Hmm.
view some of these and say,
Hmm.
what is your take? Yeah, I like that. Hmm. Well, and I'm wondering if there aren't maybe some cartoons that were released in Japan that were um, dubbed in Japanese that we never got here. I'm wondering if that's a thing too. I don't know. I'm
Hmm.
just kind of
Hmm.
wondering because
Hmm.
sometimes um, things were localized and licensed, with different in different
Hmm.
countries and different ways. What's it's fascinating right now how Nintendo is kind of really becoming a almost like I don't know if you'd say a media company, but they're having theme parks that they're opening and
Hmm.
um, in Japan. Is there one in Osaka? Do you know, or is it Tokyo? I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. It's in Osaka. Hmm.
Osaka,
Hmm.
and then uh, in Universal Studios Florida, we
Yeah.
have we
Hmm.
have one, and it's in the process of expanding.
Oh.
There's some Donkey Kong World thing that they're working on, I think, with that, and then there's one in California that they've opened up. So it's like branching out into theme parks, branching out into major motion pictures where they're a partner
Hmm.
and shaping it,
Hmm.
branching out into all types of merchandise where you have clothing and
Oh
apparel,
yeah.
food products. I've seen Mario Brother fruit snacks the other day. I
Huh.
went and I
Oh
got
yeah.
one of those Lunchables kits
Hmm.
for Hannah for a field trip, a little pizza Lunchable kit, and it had was Mario themed. So it's like trying to find ways to branch out. Now, I do remember, I don't know if you saw this. I don't think it was mainstream per se in the 80s, but I remember seeing some fruit snacks in the 80s that were
Hmm.
Nintendo licensed. There was a Zelda fruit snack
Mm.
pack that I got
Oh.
that I thought was really fun. But anyway, it's been interesting to see that trajectory. Before moving on from the 80s, though, I just and early 90s, I did want to mention one other cartoon, and that was Captain N, the Game Master,
Hmm.
because it was an effort to bring disparate game franchises together in one
Hmm.
universe. And
Hmm.
so it had all these characters, and that must have been a huge licensing headache because they had to work with Capcom to get Mega
Uh-huh.
Man. And then they had to
Uh-huh.
work with Konami to get
Company.
Simon Belmont from
Right.
Castlevania. And then they had Mother Brain from Metroid. And they had
Yes.
Kid Icarus from, Kid Icarus licensed through Nintendo.
Yeah.
And so they had all of these characters in one story arc with this teenager who was sucked
Mm.
into his TV
Hmm.
while playing
Mm.
video games and he was saving the world. Um, so yeah, it was really fun and interesting at the time, and it's kind of like a little bit of a precursor in a way of what they ended up doing with Super Smash Brothers. Where you have all of these franchises coming together under one
Uh-huh.
title or one game,
Hmm.
and how much more interesting that is
Oh
to
yeah.
do. It's you don't see it very often. So, did you ever see that one back in the day?
Oh, oh yes, Captain N. For the age I was, that was just the pinnacle of my experience with TV. Oh, that
It's so
just,
good.
yeah, and that just was, I couldn't have asked for anything better. And we have had Lee Matsos and Chris Matsos on the show, and both of them mentioned how they would come to our house, my house, on Fridays and Saturday nights, and we acted that Captain N out all the time. I was always Simon Belmont, and
Oh,
Chris was always Captain N. We loved that show so much.
that is wonderful. Oh my goodness. They released a comic book version of Captain N, and I by chance happened to come across it a few years back and bought it, and it's pretty fun. I think it parallels the show,
Oh
just
wow.
telling it in comic book form, and I've read through it some with Hannah, and I had also with Mike and Aubrey when they were younger, and so yeah, that's a real treasure. You can catch some of these now still. There's because of its licensing, I haven't seen it in a lot of places. I
Mm.
have seen it on YouTube, but I'm trying to think. I saw it. I don't know if the site is called Tubi. It might not be that one. One of the free streaming sites
Mm.
had licensed the Mario 3 adventure, the Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3 that we talked about earlier, and the Zelda cartoon. And then the Captain N was often showed as in combination with the Zelda one. And so it was bundled in with that when I saw it. So I have to track down what that streaming service was, but I think it was maybe um, Tubi. But anyway, uh, yeah, it's still kind of fun to see look back. Some of them don't hold up quite as well as you remember. Yeah, I mean there are
Yeah.
a lot of interesting
Right.
elements, but it's still fun to
Hmm.
go back and reminisce and see a little bit. Um, so, if you could have any Nintendo game franchise in a new cartoon or movie, is there one that you can think of that you would like to see, and what would that be?
Yeah, I am a huge fan of Zelda, but I also know that they're working on that right now.
Right, right.
So, but I think that the story that we kind of uncover through Metroid
Mm,
would be
yeah,
very interesting. I
Metroid.
think that has a lot of potential where you don't the kind of mystery surrounding the hero, and then in one of the games, she actually saves one of the Metroids. It gives you the choice within the game to save it, and there's really it and it takes place in space and within other galaxies and whatnot, and there's a lot of potential there. I think that it could be quite deep. I think there could be a lot of topics that they could cover through that game in a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
different ways. And I think the stories could be very rich. Even though it's basically just one um, hero, just one character that drives most of the story. I think that she could have so many different experiences and adventures that it could really be. I think there could be a lot of potential to that. But how about for yourself? What were you thinking?
So I don't know if this is a cheat answer or not, but I wouldn't mind almost like a Nintendo cinematic universe where some of
Ah,
these franchises come together in a Super Smash type event, like
ah,
some. I don't know if they would have to build up to it like they did with the Marvel movies, or if people have fatigue for that type of thing. I'm not sure. But anyway, some type of overarching story that brings the characters together from their disparate universes and they partner somehow. I think that would be really fun because in a way, in the old games, Mario kind of was like a unifying figure. Like you'd see him in Mike Tyson's Punch Out as the referee,
yeah,
or you'd see
yeah,
him in the sports games, and he
right.
would be across these different franchises. And so, there could be some angle you could take
Ah,
where they're united somehow or happening in the same, you know, universe or interconnected web of universes. So I think that would be fun to see some type of combination adventure. But if you pushed on me just to pick one single franchise, I would agree with you that Metroid would be the one. I think that would be really interesting. That would be my choice if I just had to pick one. So yeah, very cool. Well, is there anything else that you would like to mention before we close our episode today?
Yeah. Just the one final thing I wanted to get out there and very, very quickly related to the newest movie is I thought they did a wonderful job with the music selection.
Yes.
And yeah, and thanks to that, my kids have become fans of AC/DC
Oh,
because of how they incorporated Thunderstruck just in the perfect place. And then since then, we've watched other songs, and my two kids, 8 and 4, they're huge fans now of AC/DC thanks to this game, to this movie.
that
But
is so
yeah, that's
funny.
another thing that like taking their time and thinking it through carefully that they really got that right, I think.
Oh, yes, 100%. I think you're right. The musical choices are excellent, and the score is
Mm.
also really good.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I remember when the movie came out, I kept searching for the score, and it was a little bit after the home release of the movie that I eventually found it. It's on streaming platforms, and it was neat to just listen through to that
Mm-hmm.
as well. Um, oh wow, well that's fun. I'm glad that they enjoyed that. Did they like the Mario Kart racing scene part of the movie? Do you know?
Oh
Did they
yeah.
get to that?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And now that they've been playing some of the Mario Kart games more, then they really appreciate it a lot more.
Okay, because I
Mm-hmm.
know you have the one. It was a Mario Kart Live interactive
Oh yeah.
device that was like a
Mm-hmm.
little car you could drive around your house. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know if that kind of got them thinking about Mario Kart
Mm-hmm.
at all before they saw the movie, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, we would like to thank all of you for joining us here today as we um had the chance to talk about Mario and the Mario movies and the way that Nintendo has kind of expanded beyond um, the games that they produce, and so many of us enjoy playing and playing with our friends and with our families. And we hope that maybe this talk today stirred some of your memories or feelings toward the game, whatnot, or maybe are willing to take a look at the movie in a fresh light. Thank you today. But regardless, we are happy that you joined us today, and we hope that you, as well as we, are looking forward to the next episode. And so, for the Two World Podcast, I'm Barney with Jacob,